All right, YouTube, the Russian school system is bandying around the possibility of training school children in some level of combat training. We're talking the basics. This is something that some time ago I said, really, we should be doing that here. We never should have stopped what we were doing in the 60s through the 80s, which was there were all sorts of volunteer corps groups, both locally and at state levels, regional groups, that would teach people how to operate ham radios, important in a survival situation potentially, field medicine, how to organize in the event of evacuation, how to treat burns, how to fire weapons, how to cook, food, without an oven and things like that. A lot of these skills, most people don't have them. Now, I can go out in the woods and I know which berries will fuck me up and which ones are edible. I know how to look for food and rig up a lean-to and stuff like that. But most people don't. Most people weren't raised in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere. Increasingly, people are raised in urban or suburban environments. But just because you're an urbanite doesn't mean you can't potentially learn many of these things. Field medicine, you probably don't need to go out in the woods to actually learn about it. We should be doing that here. The idea of gym class is stupid and boring. There's a reason why we have an obesity epidemic in this country, and it doesn't all have to do with the food that people are eating. Yeah, it doesn't help that people have easy access to suck down that liter of cola every day. Little bit of a Super Troopers reference there for those that get it. Very funny movie. Watch it if you get the chance. But part of it is inactivity. That is like gym class. A lot of people, I myself included when I had to be in gym, I just fucking stand around. I didn't want to play dodgeball or volleyball or any of that stuff. It's boring to me. But if they had brought me out into the fringes of the woods to learn about treating wounds or firing a bow or making a slingshot or something like that, or operating like a piece of radio equipment, I would have had a great time. For all the so-called problem children like the ADHD kids, that would be a godsend. Like, they'd like that a whole lot better than the lame-ass shit that they do in gym now. The best thing that I ever did in gym was they had those little plastic, it was like 1.5 by 1.5 little square things, with little round wheels, and you zoom around on them. That was fun. That was admittedly fun, but they only broke those out maybe once or twice a year. And then, of course, you don't get to do cool stuff like that middle school on up, really, generally speaking. No, the Russians have the right idea, and it's not even really about Cold War mentality of, well, we need a more trained population. It's just superior in every way to the modern things that people do in gym. I can remember in my high school there was archery available. Now, in most schools, they'd probably say, oh, well, someone will kill somebody, someone will put their eye out. It never happened at Mill River where I went to high school. It never seemed to happen there. You'd see people out there with training bows and stuff, and nobody ever shot anybody with an arrow. Nobody ever got mad because somebody was trying to bully them, turned around and put an arrow through their eye. And it just never happened. The same, by the way, would be true if firearms were trained with. I'm not talking about giving kids an AR-15. I'm talking about give them air rifles or something like that. At least let them practice the basics of marksmanship and maintaining a firearm and knowing the basics of trigger discipline. Don't point it at people. Don't just sweep it over the horizon line like an asshole. Stuff like that. I mean, even if they're only spending a tiny proportion of the time actually learning how to fire it, the basic idea of getting used to holding one and being comfortable with it and not thinking, oh, this thing's just suddenly going to bite me or something like that. It'd be great for survival situations. Teach them how to make fire. Teach them how to literally rub sticks together and make a fire. Or at the very least, give them pieces of flint and let them start it that way. It's perfectly safe. People do this when camping all the time. What do you think the Boy Scouts do? Are they fundamentally that much different from any randomly selected group of non-Boy Scout kids or so, Girl Scout kids or something like that? Give them it's good that they know how to swim. That's something else that really gets overlooked. We had that case a couple of years ago where some inner city black kid fell in a reservoir or something, couldn't swim, started to drown, and 5 or 6 of his friends jumped in to save him. They didn't know how to swim either. They all died. Only one of them even survived because a lot of these urbanite kids simply don't get swimming lessons. Their parents, maybe they don't want to pay the $20 a day pass to the local swimming pool. They don't have lakes and rivers and stuff to train in like I did when I was a kid. I'm acutely aware of that fact. Yeah, we should absolutely involve. Now, I'm not talking about combat training as in we're going to give these kids body armor and heavy weaponry and march them around the baseball diamond. That's not what I'm talking about. But the basics of the capability of survival have been all but forgotten. Another thing, how to grow food. A lot of these kids think that it grows on a store shelf. We can ameliorate this easily. Get rid of these gym programs and some of these retarded sports teams that they have. Like, they'll have a fairly small high school, and they'll have like 20 or 30 different sports teams or something. Why? Why exactly is that necessary? It's not actually edifying them. Yeah, it's great if you want your kid to get a sports scholarship. Isn't the ability to survive a little bit more important than that? I would assume so. There's a lot more money to be made as well in some of those skills. If you know how to operate like ham radios and stuff, that's something that potentially is necessary in some fields of work. Knowing how to grow food, that's a pretty important thing. A lot of people, would starve to death if people didn't know how to grow it. It shouldn't be just up to a handful of local farmers and like corporate heads with some agronomy master's degree students growing all of the nation's food supply when a lot of people could grow it right in their backyard. Like the relatively small garden that I have, it grows an enormous amount of food. I'm going to have like 14 heads of cabbage out there. You can bet that all that's going to get boiled up with some ham and it's going to taste damn good. Maybe make some kimchi. I don't know. I've gotten a taste for it. Never used to like it. Now I do. But yeah, the Russians have the right idea. Of course they should do this. Every citizen around the world should be privy to learning how to survive. Not just combat itself, although the training, combat training per se, self-defense, that's great. Martial arts, those are great. Knowing how to use a bow, knowing how to construct a bow if you want to teach them. None of these things are bad. We've gotten to the point as a culture at which we sort of look at the idea of even like anything military as being pure evil or something. Well, Uncle Sam might misuse the military commonly, but we're not talking about preparing them to have to join the military. We're talking about a system in which we could have a well-trained enough population so that no one's going to fuck with us and we won't need to use the military defensively at any point in the future. We need like a Swiss model, something like that. It can work. It's being done already in the world. The idea of having citizens that are trained in such things is a good thing. It'll also keep people healthier. If Michelle Obama wants to fight the obesity epidemic, don't give kids a little slab of processed bullcrap food that half the time they'll garble it down and wash it down with some like herpes-infected fucking tap water from the watering fountain, and half the time they won't be able to stomach it. They'll just throw it away. And you could give that to a kid from Africa, one of Obama's sons over there. Give them something a little healthier, and then have them, instead of sitting around in gym doing butt fuck nothing or just throwing a ball around, which is gay. Why don't they just have them do like literally field medicine? Have them do some marksmanship. Let them do marching lessons. It doesn't really matter. The point is this: it's healthier. It's a lot healthier. It's also presumably cheaper. Ultimately, it's probably a lot cheaper. Bring in a martial arts experts. Teach them the basics of karate or judo or something like that. Teach them. Get a Krav Maga instructor in there or something. Teach them how to put people down the Israeli way and nobody will mess with the country because they'll be too terrified to do so. It's a good idea. There's nothing, I think they were talking about teaching kids parachuting. Now, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the greatest idea, just putting that in there. I don't think that the average person needs to learn how to parachute in order to survive in like, a war or something like that, unless they're actually a soldier in that war. But okay, teach, if they want to make that an elective. Parachuting's the elective part of survival training. If they had that, I wouldn't have had any problems in like middle and high school like I did with, retarded gym class, because it's just so boring. You sitting there in the gym like, 1 month of gym class is outdoors a little bit, and it's basically people standing around pretending to be entertained in the hot sun. And then the other months, it's like, oh, you're indoors for this 45-minute or hour and 20-minute block or whatever. And, what do you end up doing? Hopefully, I actually hoped for the days at that point where it would be like disorganized or there'd be a substitute. So half the time would be spent just like setting something up, and then people would just kind of do their own thing and pretend that they were doing what the substitute was telling them to do. And of course, I didn't have to take gym in high school. I was learning Tai Chi and wrote off my gym credit for that. And it was much more edifying ultimately. Helps with balance and coordination. It's really good stuff. You should also take a Tai Chi course if you get the chance. That's about all. Peace out.